Shaping Strategy, the APR Journey, is Season 2 of the INSPRA podcast, produced by the National School Public Relations Association in partnership with INSPRA's Accreditation Committee. Released during APR Month in 2026, this limited series explores every stage of the APR journey, from what to consider before starting to how accreditation shapes professional practice and what it reveals about growth, strategy, and the profession. I'm your host, Christina Baumgartner, APR. On today's episode, I'm in What Now? We talked to two recent APRs about how to begin the journey towards accreditation. Maria DePetta serves as the Director of Strategic Communication for Fort Bend ISD, one of the largest and most diverse school districts in Texas. With a strong background in multimedia storytelling, crisis communication, and brand strategy, she leads district-wide efforts to engage and inform students, staff, families, and the broader community. Prior to joining Fort Bend ISD, she worked at Katy ISD, the Harris County Constable's Office Precinct 6, and was also a reporter at Fox 26 and Univision 45 in Houston. Maria earned her accreditation in public relations in 2026, demonstrating her commitment to ethical practice, strategic thinking, and excellence in the profession. Throughout her career, she has been passionate about using communication as a tool to build trust, navigate complex challenges, and elevate public education. Jackie Paul is an award-winning communications and media professional with a combined 37 years of experience in school public relations and journalism. Jackie is a passionate advocate of public education and a literacy champion. She has presented at CalSPRA and INSPRA on crisis communication, strategic storytelling, and collaborative communication. Jackie loves helping to tell the story of the Jurupa Unified School District and especially enjoys coordinating large, multifaceted communications campaigns to highlight district strengths and to be part of moving the needle for students. Jackie believes it's never too late to pursue your goals and received her APR this spring at age 58. Let's talk to Jackie and Maria. So hi, Jackie and Maria. Thank you both for joining us today to talk to the folks who are deciding that they're going to do this APR journey and just getting started on this process. I know that's an exciting moment to be in for anybody that's going through this. So I'm curious if each of you could share how you started your APR process. And maybe Jackie will let you jump in and give us a little bit of an overview of how you went about starting.
Sure. Well, I started, I guess, in earnest 3 years ago. I've been in PR for a long time, but I really hadn't heard a lot about the APR until then for some reason. And I started it, and then I, to be honest, I did a lot of stops and starts along the way. A lot of it was self-doubt. And then when I got really going, I feel it took me like 7 months total when I stopped putting it off and worrying about it.
Okay. That sounds like a story that I've heard from a lot of different people who've gone through this journey. Maria, what did your journey look like when you first got started?
So when I got into school PR, I must admit I really loved it. Then someone invited me to TSPRA. So when I went to TSPRA, that was the first time that I had heard about it. Maybe that was in 2022. And so I started my journey in 2023. It took me 3 years to get my pin and to actually pass. I passed the panel, I mean, first try, and it was very early on in the process. I struggled a lot with the test, but I will say, if people, there are some things that you kind of need to keep in mind that I learned along the way. But if you really want to pursue this, it will make you a better PR practitioner, because I noticed when I started studying the handbook and I ordered the books, I realized, okay, I'm doing this wrong. I'm a tactician. I'm a tactician. I'm not a practitioner. And so it wasn't until, just a couple of months ago, TSPRA was having its convention, its conference in Galveston. And I was a little frustrated. It took me exams, eight failed exams. Yes. And
Wow.
I told myself, I told myself, I'm going to do it one more time right before the T-SPRA. I'm going to study really hard and I'm going to do it the week before the T-SPRA conference. And, so I did it and I passed it. And I almost started crying with because someone's monitoring you, and I almost started crying with that person. And he was like, "Well, congratulations," but it was a long journey, and I learned a lot along the way. And I feel that now it didn't take me to get pinned. It was towards the end that I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I am a practitioner now. I'm doing it the right way, and I'm not a to-do PR person. So that was kind of my journey. So I tell people, don't give up. Don't give up. I know there's been a couple of other people that have taken it, 5 times, and they're like, maybe this is not for me. And I kept telling myself, maybe I should just get my master's or, go back to school. But I don't regret it. I don't regret the failed 8 test.
What a
Yes.
story of perseverance.
Yes.
Is there anything that you learned from that that makes you look back and say that there's something that you would have done differently?
So the issue with me, and I learned it early on, was is I'm not good at taking tests that are very long. So I
Mhm.
struggled with that because I the first time I took it, I have forever studied the night before and I passed the test. That has always been me since high school and college. And so I thought I could do that with this. And after the third one, I was like, okay, that's not working, So that would be a piece of advice for people. This is not something that you cram a day or a week before you take the test. The panel was really, I mean, again, I knocked that one out of the ballpark, because that's what I do. I'm a spokesperson at my district. I know how to talk, I know how to explain. And so that one was okay. And I felt like I chose a panel presentation that was very interesting, and so the thing that I learned the most was you can't cram. And that would be my piece of advice for anyone that's trying to do this. You can't do it. You got to read the handbook and you got to put it into practice. And I think that that's what, as I was studying, I was putting it into practice and learning the things that I was doing wrong.
Jackie, was there anything about your journey that makes you look back and say that you would do something differently?
Wow. Well, I think in the beginning, I had a lot of, I've been in the business for so long, but I still have imposter syndrome. And I would compare myself to other practitioners who are perhaps, I would call myself a creative. Like I'm a storyteller. I like to create things. I'm probably not like a statistician, data-driven person naturally, that I'm a right-brained girl all the way. And so, it was hard for me to get over that imposter syndrome. And I feel that most of the time was talking myself out of it. And that was the scary thing. I got blessed with an amazing mentor who I'm going to be honest, I had totally quit. I had started and I said, that's it. I'm toward the end of my career. I'm just going to give this up. But she had seen me in our CalSPRA cohort and reached out to me and said, you're going to do this. And her like support, I'm going to shout her out, Heather McGowan. Her support was really, I didn't want to let her down. So I'm like a people pleaser. So somehow that worked with my psychology. And I will say, I don't know if this fits in at this category of the question, but one thing that helped me, speaking to Maria's comments about not cramming the night before, is she really emphasized to me strategic ways to study, which is you don't study, do your panel, do your questionnaire. They all work together. So I was doing my questionnaire while I was doing my panel and studying. So while I'm building that RPI, it's not something I was born knowing RPI. So I'm reading those chapters. I read those chapters 8 times each in the EPR. and applied it to my project, made sure, I had done a project, but I hadn't applied it perfectly. So I could see how it works in the real world. And I feel like that's what really helped me. And then also speaking to the test, time management, I calculated how many questions there are and how many minutes I have per question. And if I didn't,
Mhm.
I said I have 2 minutes per question. And that also allows me cushion on the end to go back and check. And I think that really helped.
It really resonated with me when you talked about imposter syndrome, because I think that's something I have definitely experienced myself throughout my career, but it's something that I hear so much from people in school PR is that imposter syndrome. So I think it's great to hear you talk about how you were able to overcome that and work with a mentor to help you with that. I mean, it's something that can be so difficult to get past. And one of the other things that I hear a lot from people is they're not sure when they should apply. And there's always questions about, do I have to be ready to take the test when I submit my application? Do I have to be ready to do my panel when I submit my application? Can I do this and figure it out as I go? And I will be honest, I was the person who flew the plane while I was building it, because the way my brain works, I needed to submit that application and have that deadline in order for my brain to really lock in on the process. But I'm curious to hear what you both think about when the right time for someone to apply is, based on having gone through this experience and your journey through this. So Jackie, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
That's a really good question. I will say I made a right choice to not apply until my questionnaire was 3/4 of the way done. And I had identified two possible panel presentations. I had done two campaigns. The campaigns were completely done though. So I think that was one of my misunderstandings. I thought you had to develop a whole different campaign for the panel. And another wonderful APR that I met at NSPRA had said, no, you use what you've already done. So that was helpful. But yeah, I didn't apply until I was pretty far through, because I had talked to friends who were in a different situation and hit apply and then we're panicking a little, and I don't like that feeling. So I used their experience to help me learn.
Maria, did you have a similar experience, or was your experience different than the one that Jackie had?
Yeah, so the good thing is a lot of my Hasbro friends they kept reiterating, you have to study first. Do not apply. I was tempted to, because I had the mentality of like, oh, I can get this done, and I can study overnight. So no, I did study. Now did I study enough? Like I kind of maybe went through the handbook maybe once or twice. But then it's like the way I was studying, my mentor, and I'll shout her out too, Danielle Clark. She kind of told me, you might need to go the old school way and create some little cards. And when you're at lunch, study your cards. And she's like, do not apply yet. So she kind of held me back a little bit, but throughout the whole process, I did have Danielle as my mentor towards the end. I had another mentor that she was phenomenal too. It's just I was going through a very difficult situation at my school district, my first school district, and we just could never meet. So and Danielle was a little more local, and I would see her at the meeting, so she helped me out. But yeah, it was always study first, and get it, start working on your questionnaire, and at least get to know the concept of RPI. And that once I felt I knew that, that's when I decided to take the leap of faith. And I applied. And again, my panel was I applied, and then I did my panel pretty quickly, and I passed that, and it wasn't until I started taking the test. And again, I can't take long tests. So Danielle helped me. She's like, you got to practice. You got to practice with, because I was great the first hour and a half, but after that, I felt that like I was, moving a lot in my chair, and then I felt that I needed to go to the restroom. And then my mind was like, wait a minute, I thought I already answered this one. And some of the questions, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they kind of repeat themselves. And I guess those are the beta questions. And so my mind started playing tricks on me. Yeah.
And it's so funny. One of the biggest things that I took away from the APR journey was just how much I learned about myself
Yes.
as I went through this process. I didn't expect that. I expected to learn a lot about communications and the things that I didn't learn in school because I didn't study communications in school. And I found myself really learning a lot about how my brain works. Like I said, I found that I tried to do what you ladies did and study beforehand and be completely prepared by the time I submitted that application. And then I found that my brain just wouldn't commit to the process without a deadline. And so I'm always jealous when I hear people say that they were able to just sort of get themselves ready. And it just brings to mind, I'm curious if you have any advice or any reflections on maybe what a realistic timeline might look like for somebody who's just getting started in this journey. I know you both had very different timelines, and just any thoughts that you have about, tips you can give people who are just starting this. And Maria, I'll kick it off to you first.
So my recommendation would be to, at least your first year, study really hard. Buy the books. The books can be a little expensive, and you have the handbook, or the handbook. I would study for about a good 8 to maybe 12 months, and then at the end of that year, that's when you decide to take the big steps. The boot camps that Inspira offers, those helped me out a lot. I took a couple of those, and I even did the cohorts. I paid for a cohort too, and then I just kind of just tagged along with the other Hasbra members to see what they were doing. The boot camp was it wasn't expensive, but it was kind of, you invested that money, so you knew you had to be committed to it. And PR, I mean, I have to be honest, school PR can be hectic, and you can sometimes bring your work home. So I'd always say, oh, I'll study on the weekend. Well, the weekend would come and I wouldn't study. So then I had to really tell myself, on Thursday, when I get home from 6 to 8, I made a commitment with my husband, and I said, let me study every Thursday from 6 to 8, a good solid 2.5 hours or 2 hours. And I would really, really hit it hard. And I think you just have to have structure and tell yourself that you're going to do it on Thursday. At night, I would always tell myself, go to sleep learning a little bit more about the RPI process, even if it's just, a sheet of the handbook, or a page of what research is, or the different types of objectives. And so every night that was my commitment. I'm going to go to sleep having learned something new from the RPI process. And yeah, it takes discipline, because sometimes you're reading it and you want to just go to sleep. Yep.
I think we can all relate to that, especially with,
Yes.
as you said, how crazy things can get in school PR. Jackie, any thoughts that you have on sort of what a realistic timeline might look like, how you manage to balance preparing for this process and doing everything else in your life?
Oh, I have some funny stories. So yes, so as I told you, I had quit, I had started again. Once I started, I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna knock this out in 3 months. I was just like, I'm determined, I can do this. Because it was in the summer. Well, then school starts in August, so I filed
Yeah.
my application
Yeah.
in July. So we were off to the races with all kinds of crises. We have a lot of crisis communications to deal with. And so, September didn't happen. And then I did we do practice panels here. I did one in November. And then I did get my practice panel was a little bumpy because I chose a really giant project, a 3-year campaign. I don't know. I just like, that's the one I like. So maybe I shouldn't have done that. But hey, and so I had to fix all the things that were pointed out in my questionnaire and my panel. And so then so in other words, I needed to add a cushion to that 3 months. And so I think whatever your plan is, maybe add a couple months on for a cushion, because we are in such a busy career. So I'm glad I did that. And then the day of my panel, we had student walkouts that day. So I told my bosses, I prepared messaging for them. I'm like, you'll be good for 2 hours. And then after I jumped off, I was right onto crisis comms. But I'm like, hey, that's the life. We might as well do it. But yeah, I guess definitely add some cushion for unexpected things, and not only in your professional life, but in your personal life. Life happens.
Mhm.
I love that your bosses were so understanding of you needing to have that moment in the middle of a crisis to still be committed to your own professional development. I think that's amazing.
Well, they're really awesome, but they were so supportive and understanding, and I had given them all the tools that they could handle things for just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have a good relationship, so that was helpful for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I know that's something that can be so important, especially at the beginning of this process when you're just starting to figure out what it's going to look like, and making sure that you have people around you that are supporting you through this. And you've both mentioned previously your mentors that you've had throughout this process. When did you sort of bring your mentors into your journey? Do you wish you had brought them in sooner in your journey? Do you think that there's a sweet spot for when somebody who's going through this should bring a mentor into the picture? Jackie, I'll start with you.
So I would say from the moment you decide to do it, and for me, I am we wouldn't know that, but I'm a little bit shy. So I was afraid to impose, and I was afraid to ask. So for me, so I've had multiple mentors, and even ones that aren't a mentor, but someone I admire who's had their APR, I could just reach out and ask them questions. But yeah, I think I would say bring them in early. Ask their advice even on the process and what they think in terms of your if you're someone that you know well, like in terms of where you are at in your career and what their advice is. I did ask my mentor like what do you think? Is this should I not do it, or when's the best time? And that was that, and just to talk to someone who kind of roots you on at any point is super helpful, because it's pretty stressful. So it's nice to have a cheerleader.
Maria, how about you? What was your experience with the mentor process?
It was good, so I had two. At the beginning, the first one was really helpful with like giving me the books. And I didn't have a lot of money, so she was like, look, you can rent the book, you can let me ask and see if someone is not using their book anymore. So she moved stars and moon to get me the books, and I invested in one of the books, which was the effective public relations one that everyone kept talking about.
Mhm.
And she said, I'm going to get you some other books, and she kind of bookmarked them for me. And she said, these are the chapters that helped me a lot. I was with her until after I took the panel presentation. And then after that, we kind of separated a little bit just because the PR world got crazy. And Danielle seemed to be a little bit closer to me. Again, I would see her at the meetings. And so she was more of a moral support, because after failing 3 of the exams, I told her, I don't really know if I'm going to continue. And again, you're investing this money and you don't see a return, and and well, there was a return. I was learning. I just couldn't seem to get over that one hurdle of the long test. So she helped me through that, and she provided more emotional support. And every time we would see each other, she would tell me, hey, how's it going? And she'd always just check in. And where are you at now at your, in your path, in your race towards the APR certification? So that was good for me. Both of them, they were different, but both of them helped me in a very strong way.
I think that's great that you both leaned so much on the folks that were in your area and and understood not only the global world of school PR, but even your more localized world of school PR. And it sounds like you both benefited a lot from having people come on board pretty early to help mentor you and guide you through that process. So that's great to hear. And I know Inspira has a really strong program too. If people who are listening don't have somebody who's in their immediate area or within their SPRA that they can call on to serve in that mentor role, Inspira is able to connect people to mentors that can help them through this process. And you both talked about how your mentors were sort of cheerleaders for you and really helped with that. And I know going through the process, part of it is that we have to be our own cheerleader as well. And so I'm curious if you could go back to day one of deciding that you were going to start this journey, what would you tell yourself? Maria, we'll start with you on this one.
Oh, wow, that's a good question. So what would I tell myself? I think because I'm kind of like a little daredevil. So I'm like, either I do the APR or I do a master's. And so there were a couple of friends of mine that did the APR, and I said, you know what? I think I'll go that route. I think I should have asked myself, um, what was coming in the future. So there was a couple of things, and I'll kind of share something personal about my life. So I had two kids, and they were little, they were newborns. And then life threw me a curveball, and my firstborn got leukemia. So yes,
I'm so
yeah.
sorry.
And so during that process, I was, that's where Danielle came in. Danielle was like, if you need a break, take a break. You need a break right now. You need to concentrate on your daughter. And then that kind of helped me because she told me, she's like, maybe you can use your hospital stays with your daughter. And, kind of, she was trying to help me mentally, and so I could stay sane because there was a lot going on. I still had a job in PR. Plus I had a child that had leukemia. And then we were on a journey of 2 years for treatment. So she was very helpful on the mental side. So she said, why don't you use your time while you're with your daughter at, either, in the hospital and study? Because most of the time, when kids get chemo, they sleep. So I took her advice and I would study and I would take the cohorts at that time. That way I wasn't thinking about other things that were not very productive. And so that actually helped me, and one of my biggest cheerleaders is my daughter, because she was, yeah, I hope I don't get emotional. But every time I failed, she would kind of see me crying and she was like, Mom, you can do it. Remember, you told me that, you can get through this, and she's right. I would tell my daughter, I'm like, we're going to get through this and we're going to ring the bell, which we did, and so she rang the bell, and shortly after I took more tests, two more, and one was where I got pinned.
That's
So
amazing.
so that helped me out a lot. The fact that I saw a child, a 3-year-old, being so resilient and she didn't give up, and I was like, well, I think I can do this for this test. I know I can do this. And, just her being my little cheerleader also helped me out too.
Oh, I'm so
Yes.
sorry that you went through that, but I love that
Ending,
you
right?
you both got to sort of model perseverance for each other
Yes.
because
Yeah.
she got a model of perseverance in watching you continue to pursue this thing that was so important to you. So
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
amazing. Jackie, if you could go back to day one, what are you telling yourself as you begin this process?
Well, first, I just want to congratulate you, Maria. And that's an amazing that you could just persevere like that. So I'm so proud of you.
Well,
We'll start
thank you
with
so
that.
much, Jackie.
I'll start with that. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. But
Yeah.
let's see, what would I tell myself? I think, as I mentioned, I still have imposter syndrome even at this age. But just you got this, girl. You can do it. You can do it, and you just have to keep motivated and keep going, even when it's hard.
I think
And
that's
don't go on a no carb diet during the APR process. You must if you have to eat carbs, you must, and I did. So there you go.
Carbs are very important for the brain.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Are there any final words that either of you would like to share with our listeners who are just getting started on this journey?
I'll take that one. I would tell them you can do it. You will learn so much and you can do it. Don't give up and read the books. And I mean, now that I have my APR, my boss is like, I'm so proud of you. And I saw how you constantly would fail these tests, and even my boss told me, she was, one of my former bosses, she said, did you save all those notifications that said that you failed? And I said, yeah, I did. She's like, I would write on those papers, I would write failed, failed, failed. And then you put over those 7 failed letters, you put your pen and you put the letter that they send you that says that you passed, and then obviously I put a picture of my daughter, and, all these inspirational things that I use to help me through the journey. But it makes you feel good. It's something for you. And it's not about, because I never did it like for a raise, but some companies, they appreciate that, and they see the certification, and they give their PR practitioners, more money. And so that feels good too, no one's going to complain about that. But yeah, it's something I don't regret any of it, even though I went through a hell, to get there. It was so worth it. So worth it, and I tell people, just stick with it, and you'll make it.
Good advice. Jackie, any final words for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say too, respect yourself and give yourself a pat on the back for even trying, and be honest with yourself of who you are. So like, I'm a creative person, lean into it, that's okay. And I could not study for 2 hours at a time because I have ADD. And I'm like, what? So 20 minutes a day, that's all I could do, small spurts. And so just understand yourself, respect yourself, and you can do it.
Also, really great advice. Thank you both for being here and participating in this episode and sharing all of your stories and sharing your journey with our listeners. We really appreciate you taking part in this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shaping Strategy, the APR Journey, is a limited series podcast from the National School Public Relations Association, produced in partnership with INSPRA's Accreditation Committee. Be sure to visit inspra.org for more information about accreditation in public relations, membership information, professional development resources, and more.